Did you know that muscle power declines faster than muscle strength as we age? No one's talking about this as being a very strong predictor of our longevity. And here's what's also fascinating: this decline happens years before you notice any loss in strength. Let me share some research that's published in Sports Medicine that I came across maybe a week or so ago. But before I continue, I'm Julian II, founder of Executive Health, and we specialize in helping leaders optimize their performance through precision health strategies. As mentioned, let's talk about a brief, maybe it's a new term that's just making the waves, but it's a very vital component of healthy aging, and that is muscle power. And let's talk about why it matters, some of the risk of ignoring it, and how you can use it and train for it and benefit both physically and mentally. And so the first thing is, I guess we should start by, what does it mean to have muscle power? What does that even mean? Is that just some made up term? Well, in this research paper, they defined it, and it's pretty much, if you think about it, strength is how much force you can generate. Power is how quickly you can generate that force. So think about this like daily activities of catching yourself when you stumble, rising quickly from a seated position, or any sort of action like where you're generating force like that. That is power in action. And there's tons of examples when you're in the weight room. And during this research study also found that muscle power is a better predictor of aging-related outcomes such as falls and frailty and overall health. And it may seem weird to talk about this. You may say, well, I'm only 35 or I'm only 30 years old. I'm not 80 or something like that, but you will be one day. And a lot of times what you do today plays a big role in how tomorrow and beyond is going to end up. These small things add up, because for most of us, men and women, we start to lose mass and strength and power right after we pass 30, unless you're actively doing something about it. So getting back to it, in everyday terms, muscle power is going to help keep us agile, resilient, able to perform daily tasks effectively. So think of this as like a energy boost that your body needs to stay sharp and functional and just resilient. I guess resilience is the best word to think of it. And another chart, this was in the same study as well that I will share here, is this is where it gets interesting. Around age 50, we know that your muscle strength naturally declines about 3% each year. And muscle mass, that drops to 1% annually. But muscle power is actually even steeper. And this is why, or I should say, this is how scientists came up with the accelerated power loss term of powerpenia. This is where they get it from. And this is why it's one of the strongest predictors of aging-related health issues. And probably by this year, you're going to hear this more in circles. This research study is fairly new. I don't even think it's a year old yet. So it hasn't really made the rounds just yet. But I think you're going to hear this a lot. And so I thought it was beneficial to bring this up to you all as another component to add in your training. Now, the solution for this involves two different things, I would say. And the first one's going to be resistance training. And the next one's going to be a more precise protein intake. And research says 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. So if you're a 180-pound executive entrepreneur, that's 98 to 130 grams of protein. If I'm being honest, and this is what I do with myself, I pretty much increase that amount, especially if you're doing any sort of really, really hard training. you can use the extra protein. And so I tend to say get a gram of protein per body weight if body composition is your top goal and you're training hard. So for me, I'm pretty much around 195 pounds. So on any give or take day, I aim for 195 grams of protein. And sometimes you get a little under, sometimes you get a little over. It all averages out. I don't really get too OCD about that. Now, if you have a lot of weight to lose, someone could say, hey, man, I'm 250, but I need to lose about 80. I need to lose about 60 pounds, right? In that case, I would have your goal weight. That's your protein number, right? So 250 and 60, you're going to say around 190. That's going to be my estimated protein intake for that. And then lastly, combine this with strength training 2 to 3 times per week. 2 is an absolute minimum. I love 4 times per week. But I also love 3 times per week. If you do 3 times per week and you just don't like the gym, then I would go with a full body routine, and that's the biggest bang for your buck. But no matter what you do when it comes to strength training, stick with the compound lifts so you can get the most bang for your buck and also a much more efficient and effective session. So doing these things is you're not only going to maintain, but you're also going to help improve your power output. Now, another area is concerning the measuring and the improving of the muscle power. And so research in this paper showed that power training can produce anywhere from 10 to 97% in greater improvements in the muscle function compared to traditional strength training. And so, these aren't just numbers, and it's a little different in terms of the nuance, right? In terms of like what's power training, what's regular strength training, right? And you don't want to get lost in the semantics, but there is a little bit of difference. The research showed they gave 4 specific approaches and examples. I will share those. One of those is stair climbing with speed variations, using weighted vests and dumbbells for progression. Another one was a time chair test, pretty much where you're standing as during interval training with it. So you're performing this for 30 to 60 seconds, getting up and sitting down. Another one was fast step-ups using body weight or additional resistance. And the last one is probably things that we're much more familiar with is exercises like squats and deadlifts. And there's so many variations of the squats and deadlifts. And then bench presses, there's a lot of variations of that. But you're doing these things and you're performing these with a little more explosive power in the lifting phase, in the lifting portion of it, right? But you still want to maintain perfect form, but you're just being a little more explosive with it. And so you're probably as well not going to do as many reps with this type of training. So for what I typically do, I do a combination of this, of course. There's stuff where it's just predominantly focused on hypertrophy, and there's certain ranges for hypertrophy. But then there's also things for pure strength and power, and I have that section off. And so maybe it's 1 or 2 exercises each time that's focused on power and strength, and then I go into the hypertrophy. And that's a pretty easy way to go about it. I would typically set the power for the first exercise of the day after you're getting warmed up and all that stuff. And so when we think about this is that muscle is not just about movement. It's not just about aesthetics. Muscle is probably our most important organ. And there's a few people out there who say that, and I tend to agree with them. It's your body's metabolic powerhouse. It influences your metabolic health, your brain functioning. And I think most importantly, it gives us confidence, gives us a little more better executive presence, but it also gives us the ability to live a more healthy and adventurous life that's free of limitations, that's free of something happening. Like a lot of times, think about people that fall or get hit by something and it just knocks them down for a while. And so I think when you have this inner confidence that you build from being a strong and powerful person, there's a little swagger that you have compared to the next person, compared to the average person. So you're not just training for power just to prevent falls. You're doing it to maintain independence. You're enhancing every aspect of your physical and mental performance. And so think about your typical day as a leader, right? This mental sharpness that's needed in a late day meeting, energy to engage fully with your family after a long day, the confidence in your physical presence during a presentation, as we mentioned. And that's not just about endurance and strength. There's a set of power as well with that. That's the trifecta. So when you're thinking about going to the gym, when you're thinking about your strength training, your weight component and that program aspect, we have endurance, we have strength, and then we also have power. And keep that trifecta in mind. So here's what you can do next. It's you can do something very basic. You can assess your current power level. You can do something as simple as sit to stand and see how fast you do that. Another thing you can do is you can start incorporating more explosive movements into your routine, even if it's just one exercise. As I mentioned earlier, when you're programming a workout, I usually have something explosive at the very beginning portion of my workout. Like after I get done recording here, I'm going to do my weight training session. And I believe today we're doing box training. I'm doing box jumps. So that's kind of an explosive movement. So I will start my session with that for a couple reps just to get myself going. And number 3 is to track your protein intake. Most people are shocked to find that they're getting less than half of what they actually need. And that's why I recommend to track, even if you don't do it for long term. Give yourself a week or two of just actually tracking what you're eating and look at the amounts and the distribution of those macronutrients, the distribution of those micronutrients. And I think you will be actually very surprised to see the distribution of your food intake. So in large, to kind of conceptualize this big idea here, power training is a large part of your insurance policy against premature aging. It's another facet that should be implemented in your weekly training regimen. And so with that said, if you are ready to take control of your power profile and also your overall total human optimization, feel free to click on the link below and you can schedule a complimentary executive health chemistry meeting. And so I leave you with these words. Strength keeps you stable, but power will keep you young.